and welcome to another interesting episode of My Thoughts. My name is BKB, and with me in the studio is my co-host, Pris.
Today taught me that not everybody do well with surprises. We think that people like to be surprised.
Now, that is interesting to me. What happened?
She got in there, and of course, everybody had the baby bump. We had all said, let's be in white. You know, people already had the false baby bump, and all of them, and all of that. And the moment, because I was the one who did the tricking and all of that, we need to see, got her into where we had decorated, about to pop, blah, 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 blah. And she lost it. She cried for about 15 minutes non-stop.
Why was she crying? Why?
So that's why I said that a lot of people, not everybody can take surprises.
What was the reason
so for her, she was spooked because the reason we had to go was like, if another very close friend of ours, the story is, she's not, everybody, the person beside her was asking her if she's okay, that tears was just dripping down her eyes, and maybe if she sees the two of us, because we're that close, maybe she would talk to us and tell us what the problem is.
Okay.
So the moment we drove, right into her clothes, she began to see cars.
So she knew something was going on.
So she was like, this is XYZ's car. I said, yeah, it's XYZ. It looks like XYZ's car, but it cannot be this person because, that she doesn't know any other person in the clothes.
Okay.
So apparently her mind had traveled far. When we now got into her own apartment and she saw so many other cars. So her mind had traveled that I hope something has not happened to our dear friend. So apparently, that is it. And she literally, because she was shaking literally.
So she didn't appreciate the fact that you guys threw her a surprise.
Threw her a surprise. But eventually she came around, and because a lot of people are used, she's the person who would give and give and give and give and give, but does not know how to receive.
So is it a good kind of crying or a bad kind of crying?
A shock kind, a back to life kind of crying, like, I didn't know I was appreciated this much.
But that is good. That's the essence of surprise. One of my nieces,
but she didn't like the surprise.
One of my nieces in London, and they, almost play a lot of parts in what happens when someone who is pregnant. They have a lot of almost, exaggerated, during that period. So their reactions in court. One of my nieces in London, the husband, she's a giver too, basically. So the husband decided, young girl, basically the husband decided that, okay, you know what? We're going to throw her a surprise birthday party. She hasn't really had a major party or like a immediate younger sister who is all fashionable and out there. And they did throw her this party. And they even, and eventually she busted into tears. She just started crying when she got to the house, went to pick a kid, and she just started crying. It was a beautiful surprise that she was appreciated, and they did that for her.
So I had a very interesting day.
That is a beautiful, if you ask me, that's a beautiful thing. And tonight we have a very interesting topic that we want to talk about tonight. And we're not the only ones that will talk about it. We want you guys to join us when the time comes. But before we go into our main segment for tonight, as usual, we're going to our first segment. Pris is going to tell us what stories trended during the course of the week on our Brewing Hot. See you. Hello and welcome back to Lifebox. This is that segment where we deal really deeply into whatever topic of the day that we believe will be of interest to everyone out there and to us as well. Honestly, the topic of today is mental illness, the myths. It's a topic that is often misunderstood, and a lot of people do not even know. Even I really don't know so much about it. But thankfully, we have someone in the house. We don't need to go far away. My co-host is a fantastic person to treat the topic. She's into mental health, so we're going to talk really deeply into this. And I don't want to keep you away for long. Actually, I want to open the phone lines as soon as possible. Join in the conversations. Tell us what you want to ask. If there's anything you want to ask immediately right away. So I'm going to open the phone lines as we begin because I don't want a situation, oh, our time is up. So join us and send your questions or if you know anybody who needs resources to help them. We're going deeply into the topic right away. I want you to explain to us, what is mental illness? Because I know you know a lot about this topic. It's your field.
Yeah. You know, that all with this, this reminds me of the reason I decided to go into psychiatry. Now, when it was time for me to choose a specialty, and I said to my dad that I wanted to do psychiatry.
Okay.
My dad said, oh, I learned that I've been told that people who manage the mentally ill are usually also behaving like those.
As if I knew that. That would go.
Honestly, you know, he said
but
that.
You don't want to blame him.
I mean, this is, yeah, so this is one of the reasons. But for me, it was the fact that when it was time for me to choose a specialty, I looked at it that when someone has malaria, typhoid, diabetes, hypertension, you know, physical illnesses, they're still able to sign a will, change a will. They're still able to go about their, do you understand, business. They can still ask, oh, who is in the shop? Oh, tell somebody. They can still coordinate.
But for mental illness,
but when your mind shuts down, your life is put on a hold until the psychotic phase, you know, is over. So I usually would like to, going back to your question,
yes.
I usually would like to talk about mental wellness before I talk about mental illness. Because if you don't know the right thing, you won't know the abnormal.
Yes, true.
So, you know, the World Health Organization basically says that an individual must fulfill 4 criteria for you to say they're mentally well. Number 1, a mentally well person must be able to recognize his or her own abilities.
Okay.
You must be able to say, this is what I'm good at. Have you met people who you try to convince them they are good at something and they just can't see it? They believe that they are worthless. They believe that there is nothing they can do. They can't recognize what they are able to do. So such a person is not, does not fulfill that first criteria and might need some intervention. The second criteria is that a mentally well person should be able to cope with the normal stresses of life. When we say normal stresses, we're saying that things that everybody goes through.
Okay.
Like the loss of a job.
Without necessarily breaking down.
Without breaking down. So like the loss of a job. Like
or loss of a loved one.
The loss of a loved one. Like the loss of a child. Like, all of these stresses. Like things that the person wants to achieve but is unable to achieve. Like Lagos traffic.
Yes.
All of those stresses and all of that. Pressures that your everyday pressures. It's believed that a mentally well person should be able to cope with these normal stresses.
Okay, and what's the next one?
And the next one is that the person, a mentally well person should be able to work productively and fruitfully. When you set out to do a task, it's not just running around and being unproductive. As a mentally well person, you must be productive and fruitful in what you do. If you do this, we must be able to see a result. So when you see, for example, a vagrant, that's just 1% of the types of mental illnesses that exist. We call them, the hebephrenic schizophrenics. Now, these people, you see that we call it aimless wandering. They're just going. There is no destination. There is no fruitfulness in their activity. Mm-hmm. You get it? So it's not until somebody breaks down and begins to wonder but there are people who go out every day. But are not productive and fruitful.
Having stated the things that make a mental wellness, what is the opposite now?
So when you are unable to fulfill these four criteria, it's believed that there is, you are not mentally well, and then we can say that that's mental illness.
Okay.
The last one is that you must be able to contribute to your community. So if you're not able to recognize your abilities, if you're not able to cope with the normal stresses of life, if you're unable to work productively and fruitfully, and if you're unable to contribute productively to your community, positively to your community, you should be able to contribute to your community.
One way or the other.
One way or the other, you know. Is either you're helping somebody, you're just doing something, you know, making other people happy, smiling at other people, you know, helping in the community work and all of that. So when these are absent, we'll say that the person has mental illness. Can you see that I have not said anything about talking irrationally?
Yes.
I have not said anything about stripping yourself naked. I have not said anything about aimless wandering or all of these things. No, I'm saying that usually that's, you know, for someone who's not
true. Yeah. The obvious.
Yes, the obvious. So that's the first myth about mental illness.
Okay, now.
The first myth is people don't know what mental illness is because they are even unaware of these 4 criteria.
Now that we know what mental illness is, there are lots of myths surrounding it. One of such is, a child cannot have mental illness, or this kind of mental illness is the person has to be violent, or the person has to be on the road, or the person can't lead a normal life, or it can be prevented, or, you know, what are the myths? Just tell us, what are the myths that people normally associate with mental illness? Because to tell you the truth, even I don't know so much about it.
The most popular.
Please let me stop here. I think we have a caller on the line, and I like the fact that people are calling on time, so you can take this. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I
believe you're calling from Niger State.
Yes.
What's the name again?
Mr. Philip Ahunwa. Philip.
Thank you, Philip. Welcome again. Go on with your comments or your contribution.
Okay, I want to contribute that, you know, the truth of the matter is that today's economic trend, I think, has put in so many of us, so many people anyway, into mental illness. So you don't know, we cannot be able to differentiate the economic aspect of it, and that's one of the real...
Okay, the real situation.
The real mental illness.
Philip, are you there? Hello? Okay, thank you, Philip, for your contribution. You can call back, but I think we sort of get where he's going with that. That people cannot identify. He did mention that people cannot identify the economically induced depression or mental illness to the real condition, which can be physical.
The real condition is what that statement is part of the misconceptions.
Yes, because we were talking about the myths.
There is nothing called real condition. When someone has an emotional breakdown, he already has an emotional breakdown. Whatever, and a lot of times we think that this leads to this. One of the most popular is the fact that because someone had a heartbreak, then he broke down. That
we hear that
commonly.
A
lot of times we think that in diagnosis, when we have to make diagnosis, we use a particular model. We look at the biological factors, the psychological factors, and the social factors. Now, there are different reasons why people break down. People are predisposed, to certain factors. So the fact that someone, had a relationship that didn't work out is not a singular reason for the person to break down. The fact that somebody is, when I hear economical, it means that, yes, I've been involved in a study before, but that, we're trying to look at the relationship between poverty and mental illness. We tried to do that research paper. And the truth is, we know that, yes, economy usually could affect someone's emotion, but there are other factors that now comes into play that eventually makes the person break down. So there's nothing called real mental illness and maybe relationship induced or economically induced. No.
Let me interrupt you there. Pardon me to do that. I'd like to ask, because I've heard that mental illness is not a singular disease.
Okay.
That it comes with, there are other associated diseases. For instance, say anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, that's another form of mental disease, that they all combine to make mental illness. Can you
okay, let me shed more light on that. There are so many types of mental illnesses, okay? But a lot of people have associated mental illness only with someone who is aggressive, with someone who is talking irrationally. Now, these are symptoms of a bigger problem. There was an old classification which makes it easier for the everyday person who is listening. And we call it neurosis and psychosis.
Okay.
Without, messing anybody's minds up or messing up your head with what we're saying. What we're saying is that we believe that the first condition, which we call the neurotic conditions, are mental illnesses that will not stop you, okay? That will not make you lose your personality.
That you can still live normal life.
You will live your life.
Okay.
And we have a lot under that category. It is under that category that we have anxiety disorders. And it's under that category that we have phobias. There are certain people who have phobias. Okay? There are people who have personality disorders.
True.
Personality disorders, for example, we have some people who we call, for example, who have the OCPD. OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Okay. Now, this kind of people are extremely neat. They are very finicky.
Everything
has to be perfection. They work in perfectionism.
Have you been to some people's houses that they're extremists?
Extremely.
And then you're so afraid to touch anything. Even you can tell something is wrong.
So they are obsessively clean. They are perfectionists. They want things done in a particular order. If you give them an assignment, they will do it to perfection. So they end up not finishing up their activities. Because if you give them 10 things to do, they will focus on one to make the best. So they are extremely, so there is OCD, which some people, say for example, some people cannot use their hands to open the door of another person.
Okay, they want everything, everywhere is bacteria.
Everywhere there's bacteria.
Everyone is bacteria. You touch those kind of people, they go and wash up. Yes.
So that is a personality disorder. So there is a regular OCD, which a lot of people, so personality disorder is one of the neurotic conditions. Now, we now have the psychotic conditions. So when we say psychotic, it means that the person loses his mind. So that's where you have the mood disorders. So when we talk of mood, a lot of people have talked about depression, but depression is even the second popular. The most popular is the anxiety disorders.
Now, I want you to take me through the process. How does it start? Okay, because I know a lot of people do not believe. It's also a myth that people don't believe a young child can display signs of mental illness, and it's not true. I
was called very early in the morning on Sunday, 2 weeks ago, by another person who, because usually we work by referrals, you're not permitted to advertise, So I was called for a 10-year-old who had attempted suicide twice. And that was 2 weeks ago. Now, some people wonder, what is a 10-year-old thinking? That you would come, but that was the second attempt, but right now, a young girl, and that's because the family dynamics was really, really, really toxic. And this brings me to women, for example, who stay in abusive relationships and say that, oh, I'm just staying there because of my children. But guess what? In being there, you are creating a toxic environment for the children that you claim that you are staying for, and they are going to grow up dysfunctional.
And I'm glad you're talking about this, because a lot of people will see today displaying or showing these signs of mental illness. Most of them, I want to believe, they've had it since when they were children, but nobody took notice.
Yes, we usually say that diagnosis. Yes, we usually say that diagnosis is usually made in adolescence.
Okay.
Usually, the onset would have been in adolescence. There are so many people that you think they are being difficult. They are not being difficult. They are dealing with one thing. I'm not asking you to go and label anybody. Please. Yes. They're dealing with one thing or the other. But yes, I would love us, to treat childhood illnesses and mental health childhood illnesses, probably in another episode. But it is a myth for you to think that children don't have mental illness. However, for children, we have different categories for children, For some children, they have learning disorders or neurodevelopmental disorders. Maybe when you begin to notice, for example, that the developmental milestones of a child is not met at the time it's supposed to be met. For example, a child is supposed to have neck control at 3 months, and that baby does not have neck control at 3 months. The child is supposed to be able to sit at 6 months. The child is not able to sit at 6 months. He's supposed to be able to stand at 9 months, but he's not able to stand at 9 months. He's supposed to be able to walk, okay, towards from 9 months to a year. But you notice that the child is not meeting these developmental milestones at the time. Okay, these are the early signs. We say that major causes could be things like jaundice, things like meningitis in the,
So basically, physical.
So there are physical, you see, that's another myth. Another myth is that we don't know that physical illnesses sometimes. So that's why if someone is, for diagnosis to be made, there are still blood tests that we run.
Oh, you run blood tests for that?
Oh, yes, because you want to be sure that the blood chemistry, the blood work is intact. You want to be sure that...
I do know for the brain also, the chemistry in the brain has to be balanced. Am I correct?
Well, that's for neurotransmitters. But we know that when the blood work is... Because sometimes when certain metabolic wastes are supposed to be excreted, for example, urea, when it is high, when you're supposed to pass that out in urine, but you've not passed it out adequately, and it's high in the blood, there is tendency that the person could become irrational.
Wow.
When someone is thirsty, yes, when someone is dehydrated to a very high level, the person could become delirious, meaning that he gets confused.
Okay, I think that's what happens for people, mountain climbers, or when there's loss of oxygen at certain altitudes. Pilots even experience it. So that's been the causes of some plane crash.
And have you heard of cerebral malaria? When someone has malaria, for example,
it gets to a point where
and gets into the brain tissue. So
and same goes for pregnant women or postnatal or antenatal depression.
No, that's another a narrative entirely.
Okay.
But we're trying to break the myth that physical factors do not cause mental illness. That's not true. Physical factors actually do cause mental illness. I remember running an episode once, and it's so interesting. Let me share this.
Okay, briefly because of our time.
Somebody said, I was running a series, and somebody said that, that they had, and I treated this topic, and the person said, that they heard that if somebody who has mental illness is a farmer, and he plucks fruits, all the fruits that he plucks, they would, and you might also have heard, epilepsy is a type of mental illness.
Okay.
And they say that when the saliva of somebody who is throwing feet, so you see when someone is throwing feet, everybody's running away because they said that when the saliva touches you, that is a lie, it's a myth. There are so many, I can go on and on and on and on.
So
about
briefly can you give us, what are the options for treatment? Is it medical, is it therapy, or both?
Okay.
And for anybody who needs help.
So I usually, in my practice, encourage holistic and multidisciplinary approach.
Okay.
Multidisciplinary, that means that a psychiatrist is involved in the care, a psychotherapist is involved in the care, an occupational therapist is involved in the care. A lot of times also we bring in nutritionists because sometimes all we need to do is to regulate the diet. So some people might need medication. That's why I would have because in our practice, a psychologist is not permitted to prescribe. So a psychiatrist will do the prescription, but the psychologist will do talk therapy. So what the medication does is that it helps with the symptoms.
Inside.
And then the psychologist will sit with the person and do talk therapy. We want to know the triggers. You can continue to use the drugs to numb the symptoms, but what happened to the real thing causing?
Briefly before,
that's why we have the psychologist coming.
Honestly, if you still have questions, we can still manage to take a call, or you can send us messages. And briefly before we go, because of our time, I want you to talk about the triggers. What are the things, because I know there are so many cases we've heard of people who, maybe a person is a trigger for them, or a situation is a trigger, and then they lose it at that moment, and then come back to normal, and then bipolar disease.
You see, when we talk about triggers, we're opening, that it's very broad.
Okay.
So we have predisposing factors or precipitating factors. Predisposing means that what are the things already existent that can, that has opened this person up
to this kind of
the first there is hereditary.
Yes. That's biological, genetic.
Which is genetic. Do you understand? So we also talk about the environmental factors. So you see, precipitating factors could now be maybe the loss of a loved one, for example. Things that now precipitate, that now makes it, that's what you now call
exaggerated.
Exaggerated. That's the word.
And brings it out.
So there are loads and loads and loads. For different mental illnesses, there are different predisposing factors and different precipitating factors.
Okay.
It's not something we can cover on the show.
As usual, our time is fast spent.
Unfortunately.
And honestly, I really love for you to talk on bipolar. But in your last and closing word, just give us something on bipolar. Because I want to believe that
really interested in bipolar.
Honestly, because I believe so many people are going through this without knowing. And there is stigmatization.
But what if I tell you that a lot of people are going through the personality disorder called the borderline personality disorder, even more than bipolar.
Okay.
So you would think that the person, so bipolar is the person happy this minute, sad the next minute.
Okay, that is bipolar.
That's been bipolar. Okay. Bipolar is two poles between depression.
You're absolutely correct. For the first time, I'm seeing that. So I know bipolar has to do with personality disorder, but now you've broken it down. It means two personalities at the same time, or
no, two moods. It's a mood disorder.
Okay.
So two moods. The first mood is depression, which is the lower pole. The person has very low mood. And then after like a few weeks or after a month,
it goes up again.
The person is excited. The person is energetic. The person is dashing his things out. We call that mania. So when the person swindles between mania and depression, it's called bipolar affective disorder.
Well, we can't exhaust this topic on this one episode. We're still going to continue on our mental health series.
Yeah, I mean, the whole month is
to come. So you can still send us messages, and if anybody has urgent need for a resource, please DM us or call us directly. We're going to connect you to help. Priscilla, your last word on
My
this.
last words is that you must be very selfish with your sanity. Make sure that you sanitize your mental space. There's a difference between your physical environment and your mental environment. Your physical environment you cannot control. But you see, your mental environment is your responsibility. You can't blame anybody for it. You must sanitize your mental environment. And that's why I'm very huge on preventive mental health. Intervention is expensive, it's time consuming, is not free. Trust me. But the truth of the matter is that you can do you can do your best in ensuring that you sanitize your mental environment and, throw away toxicity from around you. Anything that speaks to you know what it is, get rid of it.
Delete, block and delete.
Block and delete.
Thank you for that. Honestly, it's been wonderful on the show. Even though our time has run out, we would have loved to continue, but we'll still continue this series. What I would like to pass on to you tonight is this. It is strength to seek for help. It is not weakness at all. So if there's anybody who needs help, please seek out help. Help is available. And we're going to continue on this for all of us to learn more about this and how we can better improve our lives and help others who need it around us. And with this, we're going to sign off for tonight. We'll see you next week.
Love you.
Be blessed.